that's when it gets me. It's when it's our fault. When it's something we can control versus something we can't. If it's something we can't control, yeah, it's human beings, and it's going to go off the rails sometimes. Then you have to figure out how to control it. But if it's something that we can control, it's a bummer.
The show must go on. Even if the show goes wrong, the show must go wrong.
Do you give your elevator pitch of who you are?
Sure. I'm a comedian, a touring comedian in Europe, from LA, New York, mostly. That's where I started. And then in Europe, I started in the UK scene, and now I've picked the European scene as home.
So the way I'm kind of trying to start the podcast is I wanted to ask, like, what was the last bad show that you had?
You know, I have like a very different, not to throw a wrench in it or anything.
No, please do. Throw a wrench away.
Like, I don't know if I like rate shows like that. Like I've been lucky. Like I don't really bomb per se. Like I've never liked that language. I've had shows go wrong. Right? I've had things go wrong because that's the weird thing about comedy. It's a blue collar art form. And a lot of times people think, oh, the blue collar means that we are not as white collar as the artists. No, it's the audience that's blue collar. It's not us. It's the drunks. It's the alcoholics. It's the people who haven't processed their own feelings. It's the anger, the rage. What we have to deal with is blue collar energy in a white collar world of art.
Yeah.
It's not us that's the lowest part of the totem pole. It's the access that we give our audience. That, like, if you go to a museum, you can't even look at a Mona Lisa without glass being between you and that. You can't even sing along or hum along at a classical music thing. Like, there's so many kinds of art where the dynamic between the artist, the performer, and the audience is distant. And for comedy, it's not. It's close, and I think that's a really good thing. But for that reason, there's times where things spin out. For me, I think my curse was a blessing, or my weakness was a strength in a way, in the sense that I look aggressive. So the choice to go aggressive is not good for me. It's funny when a small dog barks. It's not funny when a big dog does.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not calling myself a big dog, but I mean...
But as a comedian, it's important to understand how the world perceives you.
Yeah.
And if the world sees you as like a tougher or like macho kind of person,
100%.
if you end up yelling at a person in the audience, that's going to be different than...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. If I was in a movie, the reality is, based on the way that I dress, the place I came from, the tattoos, the scar on my face, all these other things, I would be cast as a bad guy, as the pop culture definition of someone who comes from a bad place. And realistically, I did come from a bad place. So even though, so that limits my options to reactions when things go wrong. When things go wrong, if I go aggressive, the show's over.
Yeah.
But if I stay calm and I'm the pit bull that wags its tail, it's very manageable. But what I found is that's actually the right direction for almost all comics, whether they do look aggressive or don't. It's like fire doesn't beat fire. Like, I think it also, especially if you can really keep your cool and just stay in the pocket and just like be like, you're being silly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so I think, like, even when shows have gone wrong, I've been, I've managed it, you know? Like, it's really interesting. When I put up videos of me handling hecklers in the comment section, which I pay much more attention to than I ever have before, the comment section is not lit up with people going, ooh, you showed her, or you showed him, or you shut that guy down. it's usually people going, wow, that was really nice. That was really kind of you, the way you handled that, you know? And it almost happened by accident, because I once got heckled by an autistic guy.
Mm-hmm.
And like literally in London, that's how they know me now, is this one video that kind of went a little bit viral. This autistic kid heckled me, and when I looked at him, I could tell that he was autistic, and he literally had a huge pin that said, "I'm autistic" on it. He was on the part of the spectrum. If it was a rainbow, it'd be one that closest to the pot of gold. Yeah. You know what I mean?
He's on the part of the spectrum where he's wearing a pin to warn people.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I love autistic people. I think the world would be a better world if we were all autistic. And so I defaulted to kindness with him, and I sort of found my way. I think the any show, good or bad, I think us comics too often jump to what's the next show? What's the next show? What's the next show? To a fault. And I think one of the most difficult things to do in the world is to rewatch your set, re-listen to your set, and I think it's where all the insights are.
It's never easy. It's never pleasant to like listen to yourself and hear your own voice and stuff. But obviously, there's so much importance in understanding what the real reality was versus what you were perceiving on stage, and the writing potential there. But what I will say is, when it's a really bad one, I've had shows where you're like, I've had it for weeks, like, I need to listen to it, and you're like, I can't face it today. Not today. I need to wait another day for that.
Oh, dude! I mean, I have a friend in New York who goes, man, I had such a bad set, I gave away the clothes I was wearing. Yeah. He's like, I never want to wear that outfit again. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, like 3 weeks later, we saw a homeless guy walking down the street with a Harvard sweatshirt. I'm like, you're a fool. Like, what do you? This has nothing to do with the sweatshirt. You know?
I can't remember if I saw it in the special or if it was a clip from the special. The one you put out with Red Mike on your YouTube. Yeah. You have a joke where it's kind of like it's a misdirect, where it kind of seems like you're maybe going in a direction that like could potentially be misogynist or something. Yeah. And in it, this woman is like, what are you doing here? Or, whatever. And that was for me a great example of what you're talking about, where you handled it perfectly, where you're kind of like, hold on, let me, because, and I think that is a common issue sometimes with comedy, is it's like your misdirection is a form of it. And so you're starting maybe somewhere a little bit more unsteady, and you're landing the plane somewhere that she's not going to have a problem with. Yeah. But sometimes people won't let you get there.
Sure.
So do you remember what
I'm
talking? Yeah.
100%. I remember it exactly.
And so in that moment when she calls out, and also you're, I don't know, thinking like, maybe I'm going to put this video out or whatever. Are you annoyed? How do you stay positive and, kind of manage that moment?
I mean, here's the thing. You can't be precious with comedy. I think there's two kinds of comics. There's writers that learn to perform, and those guys tend to get more upset at hecklers. And then there's performers who learn to write. I was the former. I am the former. I'm a writer, and I was a writer for 18 years before I ever became a comic. So my words matter to me, and word economy matters, and rhythm matters, and timing matters. And if somebody interjects at the wrong time, they could fuck up my whole joke. And then my anger would come through. And now what I've realized is, who cares? The jokes don't matter. I know that sounds weird, especially coming from someone who's like a writer and a purist when it comes to joke writing, but the jokes don't matter. The jokes are a vehicle for them to get to know you. That's it. And if somebody fucks up your joke, the way you handle that, whether you're in control or not, is another way for them to get to know you.
Yeah.
So it's like, now I just go, hey, look, I know what jokes are in my head. If someone interrupts, then we'll deal with that and we'll go forward. But I'm not going to change who I am, and I'm not going to let someone else change who I am just because they happen to interrupt. And it's like, and that's the thing. It's not, I think it's a reminder that our audience is wilder, and there's good things and bad things that come with that. There's an intimacy that comes with it that the Mona Lisa will never feel. Mm-hmm. There's a vulnerability that that probably the only other people can come close to are strippers, where there's like, we show things that people are like, wow, I wouldn't do that. And I admire your vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing to remember, that like, if somebody heckles you, it's not the end of the show, and ruining one joke is not the end of a joke. It's not the end of your set. It doesn't define who you are. At the end of the day, your goal should be to have a great time, period. And it's not about each individual joke.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think a really powerful lesson to remember, because especially if you're like, oh, this is one of my best jokes,
sure. Yeah.
You're kind of like, fuck, but you're right. Like there's another joke after that, and probably several more jokes after that. And, you also just have to trust that those jokes are also going to be as good as you believe they are.
The jokes are just tools, man. Like, one of my friends said this thing that I really like. He said, even if you did the exact same set, but in a different order, it's like every joke is a brick, and every set you're building a different structure. It's Legos.
Yeah.
That's it. And just because you have the same Legos doesn't mean you get bored. Just build different shit.
Well, so to go back to the original question of like, what was your last bad show? I guess, what makes a bad show for you? Because, obviously we perform on some of the same mics, for example, and those aren't always, like, oh my God, the most full room, the most emotive audience. And I think, some of maybe how we process what we're doing or the work is how we're framing these things. So I guess maybe I want to hear the story, but I'm also wondering, what's your framing? Like, what is good or bad to you? Is it that you forgot? Is a bad show that I forgot to do a joke, or I missed these 3 tags? Or is it just this audience wasn't really, I wasn't for them, and that's okay, so I don't take it, this way or whatever? Or, I mean, to be honest, I haven't really seen you struggle, but so I'm wondering for you, what is
no, it's a good question. Like, I honestly feel like it's kind of like food. Sometimes what feels good isn't good for you, and sometimes what's good for you doesn't feel as good as like cake. Right. And going into a room where people make a lot of noise is like cake, where it's like, it feels good, but did I get anything out of it? And you could feel it sometime, where the energy in the room is so high that sometimes they're laughing at the wrong part of your joke, and you're like, what? Okay. This isn't, you know what I mean? So it's like, for me, it's almost like, this guy told me this thing before. He said, like, if you go to open mics, I was complaining that when I left New York and went to LA, the amount of stage time I got was less. And he goes, well, how many times are you getting up? I go, like, today I got up like 4 times. He's like, well, that's not bad. And I go, yeah, but like 2 of them were open mics. And he goes, who cares? And I'm all the audience. And he goes, you care about the audience? And I was like, okay. This is Orny Adams, by the way. He's like super famous,
of course,
fucking
comedian.
guy.
Yeah.
And then he just looks at me and goes, he's like, listen, this is a spoken art form that we have to write to get to. He's on the purpose of the open mic is to trick your brain from the way that we speak when our fingers are holding a pen to the way that we speak when our hand is holding a mic. Putting people in front of you is for your brain to figure out the word order, the way to tell the story. That's what it's for. It's not about the applause. The applause doesn't matter until someone turns on a camera, or until you go on tour and people are paying full price tickets. Everything else is practice. So if you want everything to feel like the big game, you're going to be disappointed most of the time.
Yeah.
It shouldn't feel like the big game. If you're beating up everybody in training camp, when you get to the big fight, you're going to get knocked out. You should be getting beat up on the way to the big deal. But I think it's important to then say, like, if you work really hard, you should be like, in 3 months, we're going to Egypt. In 4 months, we're going to Greece. So you have a light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's what it's like for comedy. Be like, what are your artistic goals? And if your artistic goal is I want to have a really tight hour for this tour by the end of this date, then you could look at good shows, bad shows, and it's just a part of the process to get to the sometimes perfection we think we want to get to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. Completely. And that is, I think, a good, also good to remember for me or for any comedians who are like listening. The thing about that, because I think sometimes you've been doing it for a while, you start getting to do better shows, more real audiences. And I think sometimes you show up at a mic, there's like not so many people there, and you think, what am I going to get out of this? But that's so right. It's like even just going on stage and saying some new ideas.
Yeah, it's the gym.
Yeah.
It's not the fight. It's the gym. I think it's even harder for hosts to understand that. And it's even bigger for hosts. Because I like in New York, the hosts know that even if the room isn't making a lot of noise, you still did your job.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in Europe, a lot of times I've seen hosts create a lot of noise, but then the audience is confused because the host didn't do a single joke. And that ruins a show. Because then, or at least for the first few comedians, not one, not two, like the first 3 comedians, it would almost be better if there wasn't a host. Because if a host goes up and exclusively does crowd work and no jokes, unless the whole show is a crowd work show, the first few comedians that go up, the audience is like, I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah. And also sometimes then they think the precedent has been set like, like we're a part of the show.
We're part of the show. Yeah. Oh, now I don't like this person because they have written jokes. So it's like, but I think hosts don't think about it. I think hosts, it's even harder for hosts because they have to remember, like, it's not your job to just be showered in applause. It's your job to set an environment so that the show wins. Not any one comedian, but the show, the experience of the overall show is great. People focus on, sometimes lineup and order and all that stuff, but a host's job is to let people know what is happening.
Yeah.
Especially in Europe, where there are going to be people in the audience that haven't been to a stand-up show.
Yeah, almost every time. It's kind of crazy. Like, I host a lot because that's the way you can make money at my level. And and it is interesting because I think there's a discussion sometimes like, are we oversaturated? Is there too much comedy, whatever? And I'm like, if that's the case, how could it be that there are still almost every single week I host a show, at least a few people who are like, I've never been to a comedy show.
Yeah.
And I mean, if that then there can't be that we've reached the maximum amount of audience.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Well, so you said you did think of one that was like your last.
It was that.
It was.
Yeah, I was at a show recently where I hosted that, and I was like, "Oh, that's a bummer," because the thing that made the show not as good wasn't the audience's fault. That's when it gets me. It's when it's our fault. When it's something we can control versus something we can't. If it's something we can't control, it's human beings, and it's going to go off the rails sometimes. Then you have to figure out how to control it. But if it's something that we can control, it's a bummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I'm in a tricky spot too, because I feel like coming from a place like New York and LA where there's sort of like an architecture, right? Where there's like a club scene and sort of this generational culture of how comedy is, that there's always like the person above you is going, hey, that's a good joke, but you should try to do this, or you should try to do that. And it's considered A-okay. Whereas here, because that architecture isn't there, I've had times where I've given feedback to someone who fucking asked for it. And when I gave them the feedback, they just stopped talking to me. And I was like, what the fuck? You literally asked me for advice and help. And I gave it to this person in the most delicate way. And at the and we were even going to work on something together. And dude, he went crazy. He got super upset, unfollowed me, which was really funny. And then in that time, and I was like, and I even remember before we started talking about it, I said, listen, I'm going to suggest some things that I've learned from this other guy who's way ahead of us. And I go, but I know it doesn't feel good because this is an entrepreneurial job. We're the CEO and the janitor of this company. I go, so if something doesn't feel good, if I say something the wrong way, let me know, because we're teaming up now. So if we're teaming up and we're going to work on something, let me know if it doesn't feel good. And And if you think I said something that made you feel a certain way, tell me, and I'll tell you whether or not you're right, or whether or not maybe I said it the wrong way. I can word it another way. Never said anything. And in that time, my followers tripled and his did not, like didn't even move. And I was like, gee, and it's so funny because I'm not saying this like in a competitive way. I was almost saying it like, wow, that's a cautionary tale because I've been there. The reason why it was really interesting for me, and there's no anger at all. I just look at it and I go, oh, I remember when I did that. Mm-hmm. I remember probably my 7th year in comedy. Mm-hmm. I won this thing in the States called the World Series of Comedy. Yeah. And it was a big deal. You won 52 weeks of feature work all around America. It was kind of bullshit because if a club in Florida is like, oh, you're the winner. Okay, we'll give you a feature weekend. What weekend do you want? I go this weekend. And they're like, okay, great. You know, be here at this time and this date. And the pay is like $400. And I'm like, okay, does it include travel? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, is there a place to stay? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, so I have to lose money to perform at your club. I would have had to pay $300 to perform at their club for 4 nights. So I'm like, I can't do that. So the winning prize of 52 weeks was actually 18 weeks.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was good for me. And I was on a roll and I had all this attention and everyone's talking about me and about my comedy. And then there was a guy from New York, Vinny Della Valle. I'll never forget. He's a good dude, actually. He was in a lot of mafia films and stuff. And we did a show together and he goes, man, I really like your comedy. Your stuff's like really good. And I go, thank you. And he goes, yeah, I could see another 5, 6, 7 years. You're going to be on TV. And I remember being so offended that he said another 7 years and I'd be on TV. And I was like, man, fuck that guy. Yeah. And I stopped talking to him. So it wasn't like I was looking at this person going, oh, what a jerk off. I was like, no, I saw myself in it. I'm like, ego is such a difficult thing in comedy because we're getting applause, we're getting compliments, we're getting praise. And if we don't check our own ego is one of the biggest roadblocks to you getting better. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I just felt bad for him because I saw I'm like, wow, his comedy his fan base could have tripled. But because he was so sensitive, it like literally didn't move a single person.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something I am, when I showed up in Berlin, I was like, and I think this is true in many small scenes, is like, there's a lot of cliques and like this person and that person and blah, blah, blah. And I remember when I showed up, I was like, oh, this is so like silly. I'm never going to get myself involved in that. And that was a realization I had while I was on holiday. I was like, now I've been here for 5 or 6 years. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, I'm not so cool with that person. And the reasons are ultimately stupid. And
I totally agree. Yeah, I've had those thoughts too. Yeah, it happens.
And it only, me being kind of like, oh, I'm going to be cold, a little colder to them. It's like, what is that helping me? Like, how is that helping me in my career or in my personal growth?
Yeah. And then you go to a show and they're there, and if it's an icky feeling, you're like, this fucking sucks. Yeah. Here's this thing that I love, and now I have to feel icky until this person leaves or I leave. Or it's just so lame.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to talk about with the kind of good show and bad show thing. I also wanted to talk about good and bad audiences. I mean, we kind of started there a little bit, but I think, when I started, I had the feeling that I was like, every time, if it didn't go well, I thought that was my fault. And now I don't, maybe for better or for worse, there are some nights where I'm just like, well, either I didn't have it or they just didn't like what I was selling, but I take it less personally. I think I'm just like, that's an audience that, okay, we couldn't get him there tonight, or I couldn't get him there tonight. Yeah. And so what's your take on kind of like good audience, bad audience? If you have a night where it's a quieter crowd, how do you react to that?
I mean, I kind of try to avoid even thinking any audience is bad, because I've had an audience of one before that was like one of my favorite shows I've ever done. You know, I think there's an element of comedy that's like surfing, where like I can't control the waves, but when the waves are good, my expectations of what I can do rises, and when the waves are bad, then I have to be like, all right, the waves are small. I'm limited to what I can do with smaller waves, but I'm not angry at the beach. You know what I mean? There's going to be circumstances that are out of my control that are going to be based on weather or gravity or news that happened in the day. That's very similar. People are emotional creatures, and if something happens in the news that day, it can make one of your jokes feel more painful or annoying or frustrating, or make you look like a different kind of person than you intended to be. You might have done it on purpose. You might have done it on an accident. So there's an element that you can't control. But I just try to go up and go, I want to be myself. And that's the way to do well at a show, regardless of who the audience is a level of vulnerability and a level of transparency that is beyond what they experience from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Like Hunter S. Thompson said, I don't believe the truth is ever told between the hours of 9 and 5. And I think there's a truth to that. Like people, if you hear, the longer you're away from the corporate world and you work in the arts, the more you'll start to notice the ridiculousness of even the language in resumes. You know what I mean? Like they just, it doesn't even sound human. And it's not human. It's them trying to make us robots. Don't fall in love with anybody at work. Don't get angry with anybody at work. Don't cuss at work. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about religion. Don't do this. Don't do that. They have responsibilities and bills to pay, so they have to follow those rules. But when they come see us, it's after 5 o'clock. Yeah. And we should be able to talk about those things and bring those things up and let them know, hey, you're as free as this. You may be the dog in the house with the roof and the warm food, and you may have made that choice and you wear that 9 to 5 leash, but look, I'm a wolf and you enjoy watching me run from that side of the window. Yeah. You know what I mean? But if the wolf just sat there, the dog would be like, what the fuck am I watching him for? Yeah. Yeah. That's a weird metaphor.
I like it. It's and it perfect since we have this tiny wolf here on my lap. Yeah. But no, I think actually that goes well into the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is kind of the experience of life on the road, touring as a comedian. You're kind of, I mean, at least the way I was doing it, and I think the way it kind of happens in Europe is it's like you're out by yourself. Yeah. And you have this like intense connection where you're like making these people's night, you know, and you're connecting with them hopefully and making them laugh, and it's this big high, and then it's over and you're just by yourself at a restaurant eating dinner. and both of those things were really just impactful on the way I saw other artists, and it just made me interested in wanting to talk more to people about their experiences of being on the road and performing. So I guess maybe do you want to start by talking about your experience touring in Europe, or should we compare it to the States, or what do you think?
I mean, I think it's a million times better than the States, to be honest. But the advice I always got is the best way to live on the road is by talking to people who are off the road. You know, like if you don't have to be alone mentally, right? Like convicts are really good about that. I may be locked up in the cell, but my mind is free. And I think the same thing, like you can call your loved ones, you can reach out to friends that you've had for a long time and kind of like reestablish phone call relationships. I think it's really important because it's really easy to like stress yourself out and start having unhealthy habits when you're on the road by yourself. But also it could be awesome. You know, like I follow The Artist's Way, the book. I still use it. So I still go on artist dates. And I remember one time I was on the road in the States, and in the States there was like a real architecture. So clubs would usually book you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. Thursdays,
2 shows on Thursdays.
1 show Thursday, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, 1 Sunday. Yeah. And so Thursday was kind of a warm-up show. Sometimes, most of the time, it was Friday morning. they'd pick you up really early and take you to a local radio station. And then you'd do a morning interview and promote the shows, the weekend of shows. And you'd get a big push on those last few days. And then Sunday you'd have a slower show, sometimes a little bit more local people, and then you'd leave. I remember one time I got there on a Thursday, had a huge show on a Thursday, went out partying with the local comics. That morning I was so hungover, and my manager happened to listen to the radio interview, and he goes, "Hey man," he's like, "that is the most exhausted I've ever heard you on a radio interview." He's like, "You're normally so good." And I'm like, "Well, I was hungover, man." And I go, but don't worry. I went home and I took a power nap, so I'm gonna be ready for tonight. And he goes, "Can I just explain something to you?" And I go, "Sure." He goes, "There's 200 people in the theater. How many people do you think are listening on the radio?" And I go, and he goes, "Like almost 100 times that." He goes, "So saving yourself for those 200 people is nice, but if you don't have enough energy for the 20,000 listening on the radio, you're fucked." He's all, and I think that's what happens to us on the road sometimes. It's like when I go on the road, I'm like, I'm saving my energy for the people in the show, but it's like content matters now. It's a part of the job.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's important to live a normal life. I know guys that live on the road and their comedy, I've never seen it before. They're getting worse. I didn't think that could happen. I didn't think you could become worse after doing something for longer, especially like comedy. But the reason why they're getting worse is because their lives are getting smaller. Comedy you don't just get better at comedy by becoming a better joke writer. You become better at comedy because you're a better joke writer and you're noticing more things about the life that you're living. But if your life gets smaller and then all your jokes tend to start being preachy, here's the way I think we should all live, right? That kind of a thing. And, here's what happened on my audition. Here's what hotel rooms are like. Here's what trains are like. Here's what planes are like. And now the regular person is like, that's funny, but I don't relate to you the way I would a comic who lives a normal life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I like a Bill Burr who like talks about real life because he lives a real life. I was in New York and I saw comics that would do 10 spots a night who were super famous. And then they'd be like, "Yeah, we're going to Connecticut on a Wednesday with my wife. I'm going to go do this. I'm going hiking with my friends. I'm doing that." And there's so many. I think the foundation in Europe was from people who were digital marketers instead of comedians. And it was work, and they treated comedy as work, not as art. And so the mentality towards comedy is work. If you want to get better at work, you do more work. And it's like, no, that's accounting. If an accountant works for 1 hour and then works for 10 hours, the output is 10 times. But if a creative person works for 1 hour and then works for 10 hours, the outcome isn't 10 times. It really depends on the mood, the energy, the inspiration. And if you're not living a life where you're being inspired, where is your writing coming from?
Yeah.
So I think you have to balance it with your mental energy. But I think a big part of that is figuring out ways to eat healthy. Like I am more healthy on the road than I am off. When I'm on the road, I run every morning. Every time I'm on the road, I don't care if I'm tired, I get up and I run. If I'm too tired to run, if I'm hurt, I go for a long walk. But it starts my day by doing one healthy thing. And then if I'm going to eat junk, I'll eat it, right before the show, maybe, a few hours before the show. But I try to start my day healthy so I have more energy. And I think you can control it. And it's not necessarily a thing that I do because I want more money or I want to sell more tickets, but it's because I want the endurance and I want the inspiration and I love writing jokes. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people in comedy that have stopped enjoying joke writing and have started only being focused on fame. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing you said about living life really resonated with me because, here in like on the local scale, January and February is like this is the month to get get some money. You're hosting, people are coming out to comedy. It's good. And I had this streak where it was like I was working like 7 days, 6-7 days a week, show. Yeah. And no writing. And then it was my birthday the first weekend in March, and we took the weekend off. We went out, and that weekend it was like well, here's a new bit. Like it
Bang.
just immediately, like it was
100%.
almost, it was almost comical, the level of
Yeah.
like, you did one night of living your life,
Yeah.
and you got something from
Yeah.
it creatively.
That's right.
Which is a good reminder to remember that.
And you'll see it. Rick Rubin's book and The Artist's Way. The one shift in my thinking that it did that was really big is we are not a warehouse of comedy writing where we have machines that write jokes. We're an antenna that receives inspiration. That's how it works. So if you're an antenna, you need incoming signals.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's sometimes too why I limit. If I want to write, I turn off my social media for a while, and I intentionally put myself in situations where I might be bored. Inspiration also comes from boredom. I could sometimes, when I think the new definition of boredom for this generation of comics, including myself, is sitting on a couch looking at my phone. Well, if I'm constantly having input, where's the output going to come from? It's better to sit on your couch and just stare at the wall, and ideas will come instead of sitting on the couch and staring at your phone, because they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what for you distinguishes the touring life in Europe versus in the States?
I think in general, the lifestyle in your, it's funny because a lot of times people go, oh, English is a better language for stand-up comedy. And I'm like, that's not why stand-up comedy is good in America. It's not because of the English language. It's because we're abused as workers. And I think to be really good at comedy, you have to be a little bit obsessed. It has to be your air for a little bit. And I don't think that it's not a work ethic thing because it's not healthy. It's an illness, right? Like I think in Europe, there's a much healthier life-work balance, and comedy's not about balance. So I think if you have that work ethic, that's great. It's like being bit by a radioactive spider. It was an injury, but it gives me an ability, right? So I can be here now and have the work ethic of an abused person, but have the sensibility now that I live in Europe to have time where I'm not just going to go into a city for one day, or if I do, then I'm going to make sure that I go and see some things that I think are beautiful or have some food that I think is interesting. It's great to be new in a continent. We make a lot less money than those fuckers do in the States because of taxes and stuff. And because when you're on the road, you're staying at a hotel in Alabama, which is $50 versus Vienna, where it's, 200.
Yeah.
You
Can we take a quick pause? Because I feel like maybe he needs to eat something and then he'll.
Sure.
The show must go wrong.
It's one of the worst things in comedy is winning something, gaining something, getting some kind of affirmation that makes you feel, okay, now the rest will come. And then it changes your behavior. And you take your foot off the gas. And then before you know, you're like, wait, why are all these other cars passing me? It's like, oh yeah, because I was waiting for all this stuff that I'm entitled to. And it's like, nah, comedy's not going to give you shit because everybody wants this job.
Yeah. Well, that's actually perfectly goes into one of the other, I have like two more questions, which was this thing of, I feel like, especially in a creative career, I mean, there are benchmarks, but then there are no benchmarks. And also, I think naturally you're kind of always looking at the what's next and not like how far you've climbed up the mountain so far.
Yes, yeah.
And so I was wondering, I mean, it sounds like the World Series of comedy thing was maybe one of these moments, but I'm also interested in these moments that you think like, oh shit, this is going to be something. And then it's not. Like for me last year, it's like I got into the San Francisco comedy competition. It's like my first thing that had happened to me that felt like some level of validation that like, oh, I'm not just spinning my wheels. I measure up. This is the alumni list is prestigious in the competition. So I was like, it was very exciting. And then I went and it was fine. I didn't do great or anything. But afterwards I was left kind of like,
why do you think you didn't do great?
It was actually such a good lesson, but I would say I felt like for myself I only reached 70% of what I can do. And I think the reason was, and this was the big lesson for me, was I was really nervous.
Yeah.
And it made me understand that how much my comedy relies on how I'm feeling,
Yes.
and how confident I am, and how comfortable I feel. And being in this situation where it's like, oh, these are all new comics, and there's this thing of like, oh, I want to be friends, and you want to feel like you fit in, and
Sure.
some of them know each other already, and so I just felt like I never really got in that pocket where you feel like, oh, I'm really myself. I'm really, and maybe also some of that is just it's harder to be yourself on stage in 6 minutes. Or whatever, or 7 minutes or whatever, but yeah. So, but the lesson for me in it definitely was like, that is also a skill that you need to practice, which is you're gonna have to perform when you're nervous or not always comfortable. And how do you create tools or frameworks for yourself to approach those situations and not just?
How do you feel about being nervous now? Or about the fact that you were nervous when you were there? Was there a reason to be?
I guess there was the reason was it's like I wanted to win. I wanted the.
Oh, it was a competition?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sketchfest? Or
No,
is it
not
different?
Sketchfest. The San Francisco International Comedy Competition is different.
Dude,
yeah.
This is the guy that used to own the Seattle Underground that runs it. Yeah. Oh, okay, gotcha. So your expectation was to go and win the thing.
Well, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't like. Well, yeah. Actually, I will say my expectation. I don't know if I believed that necessarily fully, but I wanted my mindset last summer, because it was in September. I was like, I want to be at least thinking like, hey, I think I can win.
Yeah.
And I mean, art competitions are kind of silly in the first place because it's so subjective. And there's a great comedian named Zach Mama who is he's actually French, but he tours in the States. And he had this great joke about it, which I could say because he posted it. But he was like, I got in the competition, and the first night, I told all of the jokes that I thought the judges would want to hear, and I got third to last place. And so the next night I thought, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna say the jokes that I want to say, and then I got last place.
That's funny.
And it's and then that video or that joke did super well online. So it's like who. I guess competitions are kind of silly, but I guess I feel like it was an opportunity.
Because I see some people would look at that and be like, okay, what's the secret sauce in that? He admitted a flaw. Like, I know this guy who does that now. He just goes, oh, every time something bad happens, I'm just going to post about it. And it's like, I think it's a little deeper than that. I think it's like, well, what was his energy when he was writing that joke? His energy was, okay, I don't care what anybody thinks now because it's pointless. So I'm just going to write for the joy of writing.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be. You know what I mean? Just like, it's a pretty noble thing, that comedy. I think it can be a noble thing until you want something from it, Like, there's this thing Gary Vaynerchuk used to say, and I hate quoting him, but it's true. He said, think of the person you most love in this world. He's like, now, has that person ever driven you crazy? And it's like, yeah, of course. But are you still with that person? Do you still spend time with that person? Do you still love them? Of course. Like, okay, that's how you should feel about your career. Do what you love, because it will inevitably drive you crazy.
Yeah.
If you love comedy, comedy's going to drive you crazy. But if you have love for it, you'll keep doing it. But if you love comedy because of what you think comedy will give you, money or fame or other things, then it will drive you crazy. It will make you go nuts. But if you do it because you simply want to be great at it, and the nice thing is the money will come.
Yeah.
If you just want to be great at comedy for the love of comedy, that should be the fuel that you use. you know. And I think when he, I don't know him, so I don't know the joke. I kind of had the opposite experience. I did the World Series of Comedy, and they told us to keep doing the same 20-minute set because that's a feature-length set at the time. So there's no, and the competition was about finding the best feature in the country. It was a 1-year-long competition. And when you entered, you can compete at 3 different locations around America at different times of the year. If you win one, you got to go to Vegas to perform. I won all 3 in Florida, Chicago, and Minnesota. I was the first comic to ever do that in the history of it. I got to Vegas. I was still nervous, even though I was the only comic that had done that ever. I got there, inevitably, I know my set, but now I'm watching these 2 other guys that were 2 of the best in the country, and they were fucking hilarious. And I saw their 20-minute set for the first time, and I've heard my set a bunch. So I was like, I remember going, these guys are so fucking good. I'm not going to win, but that's okay. I'm going to get third. So I might as well just do a different 20-minute set, because if there's bookers in the audience and they saw that I was good enough to be third with a 20-minute set, at least now they'll know, hey, this guy has even more than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, right? Because for me, it wasn't about winning. It was about building relationships with club owners. And there were club owners that were judging. So I'm like, let's show them that I have 40. These guys might have a great 20. I'm going to show them that I have a great 40. So I did a completely brand new set in the finals, and I fucking won. They loved the second set even more. And they're like, where were those jokes before? They're like, I'm like, well, I guess I didn't need them before.
Yeah.
You know? But I did it because it was fun. I did it because I was just having a good time. And I said, I'm not competing anymore. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And you know what I mean? So it's kind of the opposite. But it's a better joke to say, yeah, I did what I want to do and it still came in last.
But do you ever get nervous anymore?
Every time. I get nervous every time. But I think it's like there's good fats and bad fats when you eat. And I think there's good nerves and bad nerves. I think you should always have nerves because it means you care.
Yeah.
But not to the point where you're like doubting yourself or being hard on yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I do it for me first. I want to have a good time. I want to laugh. I'm talking about the things that frustrate me. And it makes me feel better when I get a room full of people to laugh at this thing that used to hurt me. So it's like rewiring the experience in my head. When I used to think about divorce, it hurt me. And now when I think about divorce, it makes me laugh. Because I wrote a joke about it, and I've had thousands of people now laugh with me about that joke. Not in a mean way, but in something bad happened, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You know?
You were talking about like that. I don't know if we were talking about in Europe or Berlin specifically, that it's like people are very money. Sorry, I'm just going to get
No problem.
We're just on the edge of his like time when he wants
No worries.
to go. So
Yeah, I get it.
but so we were talking about money, and that like you were saying kind of that to you, I can't remember if you were saying Europe or Berlin, that like it was a much more money motivated scene than like in New York or something. And what I was wondering about with that is like for myself,
Which sounds weird.
what do you mean? Like how so?
It sounds weird that a city in America like New York would have artists that are less motivated by money than a city like Berlin, who all the other arts are almost like more about the art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The comedy scene to me in Berlin is an anomaly amongst the other art scenes in Berlin. The other art scenes in Berlin are like, art is pure. I've got a day job, but this is my art.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so that's kind of what I wanted to ask about is like, I mean, my situation is kind of unique, but I had this job. I used to work as a commercial fisherman in Alaska. It was
That's cool.
It was very cool, but it's backbreaking work.
Sure.
And I'm very lucky because it financed. I was so privileged that like the first couple years I was doing comedy, I essentially was doing comedy full time because I had a job where you just work for 3 months and then you live off of it. And so, I mean, that was incredible for me artistically.
Yeah.
But then there's a point with that job where it's like, physically, I was getting too old. It's dangerous. It's crazy.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. And
I have a friend who lost his finger doing it.
I almost lost my hand the last season, and that was that was kind of a thing for me. One of the reasons why I decided to stop.
Yeah.
But so then it was like, okay, let's see. I have some savings from this. Let's see if I can start running some shows, whatever. I make a little bit of money from comedy, and having our discussion about that the other day about, the money motivation thing. Mm-hmm. There's part of me that's like, well, I do feel that, where I feel like because I've almost in a way that way earlier than I ever would in the States, mm-hmm. I've put this money pressure of like, I need to eat off of this.
Yeah.
That I'm sure is affecting my art in some way and my creative process. On the other hand, it is because I've gone all in on it. I approach it like this is my thing, and like as you say, like the content, these type of things, I'm able to approach those with passion and a vigor that I don't know if I could do that if I had an office job or like a real job. So what is your thought process on, or what is your thought on kind of when to make the jump from leaving your normal day job behind, and or if it's a more unique situation like mine, do you think would I be better off if I were not running shows and having to give some of myself to a job, but also be less concerned with the money?
Yeah. Well, running shows is a job.
Yeah.
But like first of all, say I'm not an expert on like the path. Nobody is.
Yeah. Well, right? And there's no one path.
There's no one path. Everybody has their own path. So all I can share is like, one, I've had the good fortune of starting comedy in a place where I had people I could take to lunch that have been doing comedy 30 years. You know what I mean? Like crazy 50-year-old guys that have been doing comedy since they were 15 is wild. And I'll never forget this thing that still lives in. If my head was a wall above my desk, this would be the poster. Mm-hmm. And this guy said to me, he goes, I really like the ingredients you have in the fridge, and I'm excited to see what you're going to cook. And I'm like, wow, thanks. And then he goes, but I wish for you that you find your voice before your audience finds you. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, if you get any kind of following or fame before 7-8 years of comedy, or before you're a headliner, or whatever it means, like to me, finding your voice is like your taste is here and your ability is here. And the frustration thing is closing that gap.
Yeah.
I know what kind of jokes I want to write, but I can't make all my jokes there yet. Once you close that gap, that's your voice. Some people reach it in 7 years. Some people reach it in 10. It's not something you do in 2 years, for sure.
Yeah.
But there are people who, the reality of audiences is they don't fall in love with us for the punchline. They fall in love with us for the premise. They fall in love with us for what we are talking about. And then they root for the joke to be good. And sometimes even if it's not, they're like, that was amazing. It's just like when parents show you pictures of their kids drawing, they're like, this is art. And you're like, your kid is horribly untalented. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens. I think it's a dangerous thing from people I've talked to, and from Rick Rubin's book, the Creative Act. He goes, it's a bad idea to quit a source of income. That could be putting on shows too, by the way,
Yeah.
A source of income, and go all in, because the danger is, instead of creating the art that you want to create, you're creating art because you have to pay bills. Mm-hmm. And the art that you create because you have to pay a bill, the quality is lower than the art. You're like, nope, that's not good enough yet. That's not good enough yet. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this. And maybe and 99% of the times, the things that we want to talk about are harder to write. It's not as easy as the things that everyone else is talking about. You know what I mean? Everybody has their path, and the path is not a straight line. It's not a Google map. We go up and down and sideways and backwards and bottom out. And anybody who's been in comedy more than 10 years and says they've never thought about quitting is a fucking liar. Like, we've all thought about quitting. Dude, when the pandemic happened, there are so many people that disappeared in the shadows. They're like, this is a nice exit.
Yeah.
It's soft and it's invisible and it's hidden, and a lot of people left, especially in places like New York and LA.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that he said was important. I hope you find your voice before your audience finds you. I know comics now whose audiences have found them. They have huge followings, but the comedy's not there.
Yeah.
And now the amount of pressure and stress that's on their shoulders is the exact opposite of what they need to actually create great comedy.
I mean, that's also another thing I think is nice also about being over here sometimes, where it's like, there's a freedom to nobody watching. Like, there's a freedom, like, if I post something that I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I'm like, yeah, 800 people saw it. Like, you know what? It's
But
not
that's everybody. That's
Yeah.
everybody. Even if you're a famous person and you put out a post that isn't funny, it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, there's that documentary by Jerry Seinfeld, comedian. It's a great documentary. And he basically wanted to show people how much it took one of the most prolific writers in the world of comedy to make a 1-hour special. And it took him a year.
Yeah.
And he was on stage, and after the second joke, this woman yelled out, "Is this your first time doing comedy, sweetheart?"
Yeah.
And then he goes, "No, I'm a fucking famous comedian, you bitch." You know what I mean? But but it's true. They give you about 3 to 4 jokes, and then they're like, "You better be funny."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I just recently, like a month ago, rewatched Comedian because
Oh, cool.
I was listening to Joe List and
So good.
Tuesdays, and they were saying that's a great one to rewatch at different stages.
Yes.
And I had watched it before I started comedy, and it was such a different. Like, also Orny as a character was I understood him in such a different way.
Yeah.
And
They made him look worse than he is. They really did.
I mean, I've heard that, and I mean, I like his podcast, and I'm not saying anything negative, but more for me, it was like I saw some of myself in or this. There's a scene where Orny's in the green room, and they're like, just calm down, just relax. And I'm like, that's kind of how the energy I've had as of late, where I'm like, this thing is working out. And I think just because, I don't know, I guess because I want to succeed. And so that lesson of just relax and
Enjoy it.
Yeah. I read also when I was on holiday, I read Moshe Kasher's book, Subculture
cool.
Vulture.
That's
and he had
great.
this great line in it about comedy where he said, in my mind, comedy isn't about succeeding. It's about not quitting after failing.
Yeah.
And
I love that. That's
That's-
spot on.
that I wrote it. I put it on my
great.
on my desk because I was like, yeah, that's such a thing. So, all right, we got to wrap up here, but check out
Thanks.
Tamer on tour. Thank you so
Hey.
much, man. This was
Thanks, man.
super awesome.
I'm
really
glad.
appreciate
I'm
it.
glad. I like the Elton John shirt.
Oh, thank you.
The show must go on. Even if the show goes wrong. The show must go wrong.